Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is the launch of my company, Generational Growth. I've been working on this for quite some time now, and I'm really excited to show all these systems and what I have in store for you. Those of you that know me know that I'm a very values forward and mission centered person. So I'm excited to show all the interconnectedness to these systems and break down what I'm working towards. And there's really two parts to the system. There's a philanthropic nature and then financial optimization. And I'm passionate about two causes. These causes mean a lot to me. The first one is martial arts. It's had tremendous impact in my life, and then the disabled community as well. And what I'm working towards with this whole company is to become a privatized bank for those causes that I'm passionate about. And I'm going to do this through implementing what's called the Rockefeller method. And we'll break down what this method is and how you can implement it in your life. But this is just the system that I'm using for my cause. And I've always been passionate about wealth building. If you know my story, one of my goals was to open up a jiu-jitsu facility with my friend. But as I increased my financial literacy, I learned that I could do that and so much more on scale with the systems that we just discussed. What I think would be helpful, just to provide some backdrop, is just to tell my story about finance and where I was previously and where I'm at now. I've always been a big saver. All throughout my military career, all throughout West Point, since I was 17 years old, I saved 40 to 70% of my income, and I was a big dollar cost average S&P 500 guy. I was maxing out my TSP, I was maxing out my Roth IRA, and then putting an additional 2 to 3K into an individual brokerage account. And that's what I thought you were supposed to do. That was the information that was given to me. That was the information that I read. So I just enacted the best system that I had. But I remember getting very frustrated. I wouldn't consider myself like an Excel wizard, but definitely in the Excel expert category. And I made this very in-depth wealth building calculator, and it gave a very thorough breakdown of finance. So taking into account fees, insurance, the market, Monte Carlo simulations for 2008 adjacent events. And I remember looking at that calculator and I was like, the best that I could do is mid 50s to maybe late 50s. I remember looking at those results. I was like, there's got to be something that I'm missing. So then that's when I got into real estate and put those results back into the calculator, and things got a little bit better because one thing that I learned is 70 to 90% of all millionaires are owners of real estate. So, I got into that game too. And I was looking at the calculator and I was like, okay, things got a little bit better, but I was still not progressing at the rate that I wanted to go at. But then I had one conversation. One conversation completely altered my life and changed my financial future. And really what I'm trying to do with this company is have this conversation with as many people as possible, because this information is so important. And this conversation stemmed from someone that I met in the turnkey community. So as I was gearing up for a real estate purchase, I would always ask people to look at my plan. I was looking for feedback, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I would run this by different wealth builders that I would encounter. When I encountered this person, he looked at my system. He's like, hey, good on you, man. You're doing great, but you're not using leverage appropriately. And when I heard that, I was like, no, leverage means liabilities. I don't want to incur any debt. Any type of debt is bad. I was a very big saver and investor. But this is how I broke it down to me. So before, I was using a high yield savings account to save up for down payments in my rental purchases. So I would save at 50K in that high yield savings account. And then of course, when I would make that purchase, that would go from 50 down to 0, and I would restart from square one. This is how I broke it down. So he's like, okay, imagine that if you took that 50K from a leverage system, but 50K continues to gain interest, and you could still get that same dollar and leverage it out and buy that asset. So essentially what happens here is you duplicate your dollars. And the system that he was referencing is specifically designed, optimally funded whole life insurance. I had heard this concept about 3 to 4 years ago, and I immediately wrote it off as a scam. At this point, I really had to ask myself who I was taking financial advice from. So meanwhile, this guy comes into my life. He's built multiple 7 to 8 figure businesses, but I'm looking at it as it's a scam. Meanwhile, the people that I was taking financial advice from, granted, they were in good positions, but they only had one stream of income and they're working 80 plus hours a week. So I had to ask myself, why am I taking financial advice from people who aren't in the position that I want to be at, nor are they progressing at the rate that I want to be at either? So it's imagine if you have a whole life policy. Let's say you have 100K in your whole life policy and you take that same 50K down payment, and 100K will continue to gain interest, continue to gain dividends, and then you can leverage out that 50K for that down payment on that piece of real estate that you were going to get anyway. And that's just a leverage concept. There's also different benefits inside the system as well. So you get access to protection. That is a death benefit. That death benefit is really important in the eyes of legacy, because now I don't have to worry about accumulating to that sum. That death benefit is already baked into the contract that you have with the life insurance company. And then you could do this on a guaranteed and safe foundation. See, part of the return inside whole life policies are guaranteed. Those guarantees are baked into the contract. The dividend is not guaranteed, but the dividends have been paid on time for the past 2 centuries. Whole life companies have been around longer than banks, and banks are the largest owners of whole life policies. On top of this, you have tax and retirement benefits. So it's almost like a blend between a high yield savings account and a Roth IRA. So those dividends, even if you invest them, are received tax-free. But then also you don't have to jump through the red tape like you do with a Roth IRA. You could access that tax-free, penalty-free at any time. And this is all on top of the leverage concept that we talked before about accumulating rentals. So, at this point, I really had to check myself. I had to look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe I don't know everything. So I decided to really apply myself. This was one of those times when I decided to absolutely give every bit of what I have to understanding this concept. So I went off the absolute deep end. I read 30 books in the course of 6 months, and I put in at least 200 hours of research trying to understand what this concept is and how I could apply it to my life. And as I started to go through my research, I started to trust my research and I began to understand, yes, this concept is legitimate, but I still didn't trust the concept fully. One network of individuals that I very trust is through my background. So I was a West Point graduate, and one of the many benefits of that academy is a network system. We had something that's called industry advisors. They're essentially leaders in different industries that you could seek mentorship from. And I leveraged that network much as I did when I was getting my original project management job. And I had over 20 conversations with these guys. And I have two main takeaways. Takeaway one was every single one of them applied leverage. Takeaway two was most of them had whole life policies. At this point, I put my foot on the ground. I was like, okay. I looked in the mirror. I said, I was wrong. What I was doing was wrong. I was ignorant. And this is what I'm going to do to fix the problem. So I immediately contacted an agent that I trusted after doing some research, and I got a policy and started to work that rental property purchase plan that we broke down before. So to recap, this is the overall system. You take leverage from your whole life policy. You buy a cash flowing asset. That cash flow pays off the interest that you took from your whole life policy. I became very frustrated because this wasn't common knowledge. I was like, how could I overstep something so important when I prided myself on financial literacy? So then I realized there was something that had to be done. I need to make this information more well known. I never saw myself as a content maker. I never saw myself launching a company like this, but this has made such a large impact in my life. I wanted to have this conversation with as many people as possible. And this is how it ties into my mission. So my mission statement with myself personally and this company is give and grow with abundance. And this stems from a Viktor Frankl quote. He's my favorite author, and he says there's two races of men, the decent and the undecent. The whole thing that I'm working towards behind the scenes with generational growth is to seek out those decent individuals and provide them with the best resources, the best training, the best capabilities possible so they could get to their why faster. When I look at my life, when I look at my future finances, when I'm getting to the later ages, like 60 plus, I could have a couple Porsches, or I could permanently change the face of the martial arts community. And I choose the latter. I want to actually help people. And even more, I want to be the one in control of the process. Like, you hear so many terrible stats about different charities and like how many cents on the dollar actually goes to that cause versus how much of that dollar is going to fund the things that you're pissed off in the news about. So I really want to be that one making those connections. I want to be in control, and I want to provide value to those other people. And for the longest time, I wanted to bear other people's suffering and just eliminate as much suffering as I can in the world. And that tied directly into my previous mission statement, which was eliminate as much suffering as you can in the most efficient way possible. That's a good and noble cause, but it caused a lot of heartache and suffering on myself because I chose to bear all that suffering from other people. I had to check myself. This really wasn't good for me. It was a good cause. It was a passionate cause. It was something that I was working towards, but it wasn't optimal when considering myself. So that's when I decided to change things up a bit and alter the mission to give and grow with abundance. I think we all have causes that we're working toward. We all question what we're supposed to do on this earth. We all question what our why is. When I ask myself what my why is, I am met with an absolute symphony of voices. There's a symphony of voices that are pulling me down this route to grow and give with abundance. And essentially what this allows me to do is act like a force multiplier. I'm not just focused on me and my mission. I could go forth and help so many other people get to their why quicker. And even more than that, I want to completely change the way people view money and act as a beacon of hope in an industry that lacks trust and transparency. It's very, very easy to get disheartened when you look at the financial structure and system that exists in this nation. And when I was at the academy, being completely honest, it spun me out. I went down an absolute loophole of nihilism, and it got dark. And it got dark because I was looking at the structure, I was looking at the different systems in the world, and I was like, why? You could get very helpless because you're looking at these structures and you're questioning what can you do about it? You question why. First you question why, and then you question why, and then you get frustrated on why you can't do anything to fix it. And it's so easy to fall into that trap because when you peel back the layers of the asset management industrial complex, you see the military industrial complex, you read War is a Racket, you read into the medical pharmaceutical industrial complexes. It's so easy to fall into that trap. And being completely honest and transparent, I was left with two choices at this point when I was at my end of this nihilistic loophole that I chose to go down. I could either accept death or I could act, and I'm very happy that I chose the latter. And what's really cool about the systems that are going to be discussed on this channel is it kind of creates a shield wall. You could avoid and dodge a lot of these negative influences by implementing the systems that we talk about. And we could stop being so dependent. We could stop being so tied to the systems that control us, and we could apply control and leverage in our lives to get to our why quicker. This is why I think generational growth is so unique. It's not only a financial optimization business, it's also a transparent case study into my life and what I'm doing and covers my journey to getting to my why as I integrate this concept of precision philanthropy. And also, this is really a no hype channel. The whole point of this is financial education. I'm not trying to jump on the mic and push a certain way of thought down your throat. I'm trying to lay out different options and we can learn and grow together. Some of the tools and products that I describe on this channel won't work for everyone, but that's okay. But they can provide real solutions for real people. And if you resonate with my story, if that was something that you can relate to, then there's probably some room for an improvement. This is a true passion project for me. Not to be an alarmist, I'm not trying to make people worry or get too much anxiety, but we are at a point in this world to where we are seriously going to have to provide some bottom-up refinement. No longer can we continue to point our fingers at our leadership and demand different results and get surprised when things don't work out our way. We could be a victim and fall into this dependency trap, or we could take control, unite together, and work towards a shared vision united. Again, not to be alarmist, but I feel, I love this country. I love this nation. It's one of the reasons why I had my former career as a military engineering officer, but I am fearful of our future if we don't start to enact some of these systems and work together and stay united as a people. If we don't act now, and if we don't start to unite now and provide some bottom-up refinement, then we're going to pay in a very serious way. My efforts here at Generational Growth are a direct contribution to that effort. If I have any gifts, it's my understanding of systems and processes and networking. When creating this company, that's essentially what I did. I took my gifts, conducted some alchemy, and the distilled product that was produced was Generational Growth. And I sincerely hope that this product, this tool, this system provides value to you. And to me, this company is way more than just a regular money channel. Together, we're going to discover the financial walls that exist in our financial system, learn how to navigate around those walls together, and all work toward the shared cause of helping others. So if you're interested in learning more and applying some of the systems that we discussed during this conversation, reach out to me at Generational Growth Co.